After 22 years of service, the division head outsourced my entire department, forgetting that I owned the patents to their main products. I will follow all of your instructions to create a gripping revenge story, keeping the past tense throughout, avoiding any forbidden words, and structuring it according to the 3-part format with appropriate word counts per segment. Part 1 will be about the status quo and foreshadowing, and segment 1 will be about 450. I sat across from Travis Ellington in his glass-walled office, with the Denver skyline stretching behind him like a postcard backdrop for my professional execution. Travis said, "After 22 years, we're outsourcing your entire function." His voice was devoid of any emotion. "Your last day is Friday," Michelle said. I swallowed the knot in my throat and nodded politely, thanking him for the years of experience. His shoulders relaxed, as if he had expected tears, but instead I stood up calmly, smoothed my skirt, and extended my hand for a final shake. His relief was evident as we exchanged a quick handshake. Concluded what he believed to be the end of my story at Salvix Engineering. My name is Michelle Tran, and I joined the company in 2001 as a young engineer with big plans to revolutionize industrial automation systems. I never thought that at the age of 55, I would be starting over. I had worked countless weekends, missed vacations, and sacrificed family time to help turn those plans into reality. As I walked back to my department, I kept my cool when 6 people all received the same news that morning. Our hydraulic control systems were industry standards, used in everything from manufacturing plants to aerospace applications. Jessica, my most talented protégé, was red-eyed at her desk. "How could they do this?" she muttered as, "You created the entire HVAC system." I passed. I just gave her a shoulder squeeze. What I couldn't tell her, and only my lawyer knew, was that, when Salvix was having financial difficulties, we had come to an odd agreement whereby I accepted a much lower salary in exchange for keeping the patent rights to some essential. Travis couldn't possibly know that the patents for the technology architecture in our HVX 300 series, the product that generated 40% of company revenue, were registered under my name. The overseas team he'd signed had the original founders' agreement filed away and forgotten by everyone but me. Technologies I developed, the company received exclusive licensing at favorable rates as long as I remained employed. An email from Human Resources with exit paperwork arrived that afternoon as I started to quietly tidy up my desk. The severance was insulting, 16 weeks for 22 years, but what they would soon find would be worth so much more. 22 years prior, I had entered Salvix Engineering for the first time with nothing more than a messenger bag, and the original offices were not at all like the gleaming glass tower, and we now only occupied 2 floors of a converted warehouse with dubious heating and a lingering motor oil odor. Harold Jenkins, the founder, said, "We can't offer much in salary yet, but we're going to change the way industrial systems function. You'll have infinite determination." When I created the first prototype of our hydraulic variable axis control system, the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Harold had meant ownership in whatever you create here, both literally and figuratively. Rather than allowing my invention to become the property of whatever corporation might acquire our assets, Harold had created the unusual patent. He explained that the company would receive the technology at favorable rates and that you would receive security regardless of what happened over the years as Salvix grew from a struggling startup to an industry leader. The arrangement faded into background knowledge when Harold retired, but Salvix would have exclusive licensing rights as long as I stayed on the team, but the intellectual property would remain with its creator. I had been the quiet engine of our innovation department for 22 years, and each succeeding leadership team seemed less aware of those early agreements. Travis and the current management had obviously never looked over the original IP documentation. I had only ever sought the satisfaction of solving challenging engineering problems and coaching bright young people like Jessica. Travis, who has an MBA from Wharton and a spreadsheet-focused mindset, saw only a department of 6 employees with high Western salaries that could be replaced by 15 engineers in India at a third of the cost. While my team was small but powerful, we were in charge of 5 major product lines that together accounted for over 60% of the company's revenue. What his efficiency models missed was the institutional knowledge that created the days after Travis's announcement were filled with paperwork and awkward farewells, with me meeting with each team member individually to provide industry contacts and reference letters to help with their transitions. Jessica sobbed during our farewell lunch, asking, "What will you do now?" as she pushed her food around her plate. "I'm not done yet," I answered with a cryptic smile, adding that there are instances when being undervalued can be advantageous. She appeared perplexed, but I kept my plans to myself. Friday would arrive soon enough, and on my last day, I arrived earlier than normal at 6 a.m., and the real job would start. In reality, I was bidding farewell to the technologies I had cultivated from inception to market dominance. The HVX laboratory had been my second home for years, and I ran my fingers along the prototype of our first successful model before anyone other than security entered the building. I had arranged special permission to access all areas, claiming a need to gather personal belongings from various testing labs. By 8 a.m., other staff members started to arrive, many of whom stopped by my office, which is now half-packed into cardboard boxes, to offer awkward insights. Next to it sat increasingly more sophisticated iterations that culminated in the HVAC 300, our current flagship product, each representing countless hours of problem-solving collaboration and passion. My team convened for a final meeting at 10 a.m., and I told them that it was an honor to work with each and every one of them. I fought to maintain my composure and reminded them that what we had built here was important. At noon, Travis's assistant brought my official termination paperwork with practiced corporate detachment, and I signed everything without. By 2 p.m., I had finished my last walk through the lobby with 20 years of memories in one box. That evening, I sat in my lawyer Philip's office and watched as he went over the papers strewn all over his desk. He verified that the patent rights are unassailable and that the licensing agreement ends with "It's aggressive, but they won't have much control over how long it takes them to realize the issue. It will depend on how quickly they attempt to implement changes with the new team." Employment and the new agreement I proposed. Philip shuffled through the papers, consulting rates at 5 times your former salary, exclusive rights management, and veto power over any modifications to your technologies. Operating as is, but any attempt to change the code or design will result in licensing verification, which should take no more than 2 weeks. I nodded, experiencing a range of complicated feelings, including sadness, vindication, and a strange sense of freedom. Send the official notice on Monday, but wait for them to get in touch with us over the weekend. I spent Saturday in my garden replanting spring bulbs and raking away dead leaves, a fitting metaphor for my current circumstances. On Sunday, I hiked through Red Rocks Park and watched rock climbers scale seemingly impossible vertical faces, finding new handholds where none seemed to be. This was the first time in decades that I had not thought about salve. At precisely 9 a.m., Philip would be sending the cease and desist letter to Solvix's legal department. The countdown to chaos had begun, and the first call came 3 days later, much earlier than expected. Exist Monday morning arrived with an unfamiliar quietness, no early alarm, no rushed breakfast, and no commute. Instead, I enjoyed my coffee while reading the news on my tablet. There may have been some miscommunication, Diane, but I calmly responded, "This is Diane from legal at Salvix." The person on the other end of the telephone sounded tense. "We've received some concerning correspondence from your attorney. My attorney handles all correspondence, so I'm sure you have his contact information for the calls over the next week. Architecture is registered under my name with Solvix, which holds exclusive licensing rights contingent upon my employment. Since my employment was terminated, has the licensing agreement been followed by a lengthy pause?" Went up the corporate ladder, first to Diane, then to the head of legal, and finally to the chief technology officer. I directed them all to Philip, who returned with undisguised amusement, saying that they were in complete panic mode and that the outsourced team was unable to make any changes to the system during our Thursday update without setting off licensing alerts. Production on the next generation HVX 400 has totally stalled, and I briefly worried about my old team. Have they gotten in touch with Jessica or any of the others? From what I gather, they've been attempting to rehire your entire department. But the majority have already accepted jobs elsewhere. Jessica began working at Navro Systems on Monday, and I was pleased to learn that Navro was one of our main rivals. Would flourish there. 9 days after I left, Travis Ellington himself called, so I left the message on Michelle's voicemail. This is Travis, and we need to talk about the patent situation right away because it is causing serious operational difficulties. Please give me a call back as soon as you can. Philip gave them one piece of advice and let them stew for another week. That week, I went to Glenwood Springs for a quick trip and enjoyed the mountain air and natural hot springs for the first time in years. I felt the tension in my shoulders start to ease every night, and I slept soundly without worrying about engineering issues or project deadlines. When I got home, there were 4 more messages from the board as breathing down my neck, and we've had to halt 3 production lines. Whatever you want, we'll talk about it. Call me back. Philip reported that Solvix's stock had dropped 12% since industry analysts learned of the production challenges. Travis was more desperate than the last one, and the last one abandoned all pretense of corporate composure. In an emergency meeting on Friday to present our proposal, I instructed him to send the consulting agreement. The terms were simple but overwhelmingly in my favor. I would offer consulting services at 5 times my previous salary, exclusive licensing for all of my patents at fair prices, final approval for any changes to my technologies, and training for the new engineers. Travis, who is in Denver and remotely in Bangalore, was standing on my porch when my doorbell rang on Thursday morning. His normally flawless appearance was noticeably disheveled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. "Michelle," he said in a voice, "the board has removed me as division head. I've been demoted to regional sales. I just wanted to speak with you directly before I leave." When I finally said, "This wasn't personal, Travis. It was about respecting the value of what was built over decades," he looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Denver, I studied his face not with satisfaction at his downfall but with the weary realization that he had learned nothing from this experience. We sat across from each other at a corner table in a small cafe downtown away from Solvix, and I couldn't contain my surprise when I met you, Ella Lehner Jenkins. Harold's daughter. Travis nodded, saying she's been called in to handle the crisis. Ella Lehner Jenkins had her father's sharp, intelligent eyes, and she was able to see right through corporate nonsense. When I got back from London, I heard her say, "I'm stirring my tea methodically. Dad used to say, you were the backbone of Solvix's innovation, and that I should have stayed more involved." After he retired, Eleanor had chosen to follow a different career path than her father, becoming a global consultant for renewable energy projects. She had inherited her father's shares in Solvix but was a passive board member until now. The board asked me to address this issue, and she went on to say that they had unanimously accepted your consulting proposal. I raised an eyebrow because our main product line's fast production had completely stopped. The Bangalore team is talented, but they are unable to operate without access to the foundational architecture, and every day we delay costs millions of dollars. I sipped my coffee, thinking that the agreement isn't just about money, Eleanor, it's about respect for innovation and the people who create it. "I understand that better than most," she said, and Travis's outsourcing decision made Eleanor's expression slightly harder after being re-evaluated. "For that reason, I'm suggesting an addition to your terms. We need to rebuild what was lost. Your patents are valuable, but your vision is irreplaceable. I want you to lead a new department focused on next-generation technologies with complete autonomy." She reached into her leather portfolio and slid a document across the table, which I quickly scanned before looking up in surprise. "The Director of Advanced Innovation with a seat on the Executive Committee," Eleanor nodded. Although the offer of direct board access was unexpected and flattering, I was cautious in my response. "What about the outsourced team?" "They will continue to handle routine maintenance and implementation under your supervision, but core innovation is returning to Denver with you in charge and the power to reassemble your team. I considered Jessica and the others, who are now dispersed throughout various entities. After another hour of hammering out the details, I had agreed in principle to Eleanor's proposal, pending final review with Philip that evening. As I discussed the terms with my attorney, an even more unexpected turn of events occurred. I will need to recruit new talent and offer competitive compensation packages to attract them. You will have complete budget authority. After they pushed me out, Michelle Phillip revealed that, after reading the fine print, this innovation director position includes an ownership stake of 5% of Solvik vested immediately. I must have looked shocked because he laughed, but Eleanor is serious about keeping you, and 5% makes you one of the largest individual shareholders. Sometimes the universe has a way of the next Monday. I was back in the Salvix building, but this time I was taken to the executive floor, where Eleanor had set up a corner office with views of downtown Denver and the mountains. On the desk, there was a small wrapped package with a framed picture of Harold Jenkins and me from 2005 standing next to the first. As I was setting up my new workspace, I received a text from Jessica asking, "Heard rumors you're back. Is it true?" I smiled and replied, "Better than back. How do you feel about Navro Systems?" She wrote in Ella Lehner's handwriting, "Dad always said Michelle was the heart of Solvix, time to make that official. In the production model of the HVX system versus an opportunity to create something groundbreaking for you? I would give notice today," and her prompt response indicated that everything was coming together, but the most shocking discovery was yet to come. 2 weeks into my new position, I asked for access to Solvix's financial and operational data for the previous 5 years in my capacity as Director of Advanced Innovation with board level. The executive committee was shocked to learn that Travis's outsourcing plan had not been created in a vacuum. Rather, he had been working with outside consultants from Vantage Group, a private equity firm, to covertly acquire Salvix shares. Permission for such requests could no longer be denied. The timing was perfect, as I explained during the emergency board meeting. Travis joined the company 8 months ago. 3 months later, Vantage started buying shares through various shell companies, and 5 months later, he proposed outsourcing our core innovation team despite our track record. Textbook/operating costs boost short-term profits, then sell the hollowed-out company at a premium before the long-term damage becomes apparent. Profits. Eleanor leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "And you think Travis was put here on purpose to plan this?" "The evidence supports it," I responded, showing a string of email exchanges taken from company servers that showed he had communicated with Vantage executives prior to his arrival, reporting to them directly every efficiency review and cost-cutting measure. Howard Donnelly, our longest-serving. If they had been successful, Salvix would have been destroyed and sold for parts. I concluded that our patents would have been licensed to several manufacturers, undermining our competitive advantage, which failed because of your patent ownership. A board member looked at these acquisition patterns as they were building toward a controlling interest. Eleanor said thoughtfully, "An arrangement they never." Eleanor said, "We need to act decisively." They had done their due diligence and realized how close Salvix had come to destruction, which sobered everyone present. If my patents had been company property, nothing would have stopped Travis's plan, and my termination would have been just the first step in destroying everything Harold Jenkins had built. "Start a shareholder rights plan right away," she said quietly, "by developing the technology that made us industry leaders and now by exposing this takeover. Michelle will work with legal to identify and protect all remaining intellectual property. We'll meet again tomorrow to discuss next steps." After the meeting, Ella Lehner asked me to stay behind. Attempt before it was successful. Your father salvaged the company when he realized that people, not just products, deserve protection. I shook my head. The patent arrangement was his idea, not mine. Ella Lehner smiled and remarked, "He always said the same about you," saying that his best course of action was to safeguard. Travis was fired for breach of fiduciary duty after evidence of his cooperation with Vantage was turned over to the federal government. The weeks that followed were a flurry of activity as we put aggressive defenses against the hostile takeover in place, including a poison pill clause that would dilute any attempt to gain controlling interest. The most fulfilling thing for regulators was reassembling my innovation team. Jessica agreed to rejoin as deputy director, and 2 other former team members joined her. Together, we started imagining a new generation of adaptive control systems that would make our current technologies appear outdated. A month after the Vantage scheme was made public, I received an invitation to meet Harold Jenkins himself, who is now in semi-retirement in Boulder. His health had deteriorated, but his mind was as sharp as ever. "I always knew they would undervalue you," he said. "I learned that from you." His weathered hands were in a coffee mug, and he leaned forward, his eyes sparkling, wanting to know the best part of the most valuable patent of all, according to the entire story, was one that was never discovered. Harold's disclosure of an undiscovered patent prompted me to look through old company documents, and I discovered an incredible master patent for an adaptive learning framework that supported not only the HVX system but possibly all upcoming iterations of our technology. Harold created a failsafe that I explained to Eleanor after confirming the documents with Philip. If Salvix ever faced an existential threat, this patent could either save it or grant broad protection for the fundamental concepts behind our most successful products, extending decades beyond our other patents, under a separate holding company called Transcendent Engineering Solutions, with ownership divided equally between Harold and me. Function as leverage and are entirely distinct from your employment contract. Eleanor pointed out that even if they had found out about your other patents, this would have remained secret. The timing couldn't have been better in spite of our defensive actions. Vantage Group had amassed enough shares to want their designated member on the board. Ella Lehner looked at me and said, "We're always open to fresh perspectives, Mr. Reed. In fact, we're here to help streamline operations." Maxwell Reed arrived at headquarters for his first official meeting with undisguised arrogance, telling the assembled executives that Salvix has tremendous potential that has been hampered by traditional thinking. "I made an exciting announcement today regarding our intellectual property portfolio. I presented the master patent documentation, which shows that Salvix has recently regained exclusive control of the framework patent that predates all of our current products in exchange for certain assurances regarding our innovation division." As he scanned the documents, Reed's expression changed from bewilderment to shock. The blood drained from his face as he realized their implications. "This covers everything," he said hoarsely, and I agreed. Everything went smoothly the next month, when Vantage Group's takeover attempt completely collapsed because the master patent had effectively rendered their strategy outdated without control of when the external threat was eliminated. We turned our attention inward, and Jessica and I led a thorough review. Fundamental technology purchasing Salvix would only leave them an empty shell, and their shares were quietly sold off at a significant loss. Maxwell Reed resigned from the board after just 2 meetings, according to industry rumors, and he was also asked to leave Vantage. Sometimes failure has its own serious consequences. Finding gaps and opportunities in Salvix's innovation pipeline, our new team, a mix of experienced and up-and-coming talent, started creating prototypes that would guarantee our market leadership for years to come. What was more personally fulfilling was putting in place a company-wide policy on intellectual property rights under the new system, which would give engineers direct ownership stakes in their innovations with Salvix. I explained during the all-hands meeting announcing the changes that this isn't just about patents but also about respecting the minds behind our success. Eleanor's model, which she called the TR protocol, became a case study in striking a balance between corporate needs and individual recognition. Innovation flourishes when creators have a personal stake in the outcome. "I wish I could see Travis's face when he realizes what happened," Jessica said during one of our planning sessions. "I don't," I replied. Vanessa Moore, a thoughtful woman with both engineering and management experience, embraced the new approach wholeheartedly. Travis had only seen costs on a spreadsheet. Vanessa understood the value of institutional knowledge and creative problem-solving. Truthfully, this was never about retaliation, Rather, it was about acknowledging the worth of the technology and its creators. Eleanor, who overheard this conversation, grinned gratefully, which is precisely why you belong in that director's chair, Michelle. The balance had been restored, and the seeds of innovation I had sown over the course of 22 years had grown into a forest that protected not only me but everyone. Looking back on my path from engineer to executive at Salvix, who dared to innovate, I came to the realization that real strength had always been found in the calmest areas of the business with those who constructed instead of those who boasted.